Welcome back to the Ulduar Raid Guide. I'm Lore from TankSpot, and in this video I'll be guiding you through the Yogg Saron encounter. Yogg Saron is a three-phase encounter, with Phase 1 beginning as soon as you enter the room. You'll notice Sarah floating in the center, with a few green clouds floating in a circle around her. The goal of Phase 1 is to bring her health to 0. You can't attack her directly, however, and must damage her indirectly by killing Guardians of Yogg Saron on top of her. These will spawn from the green clouds periodically throughout this phase. They'll need to be picked up by a tank and brought to the center, where DPS will finish them off. Once killed, they'll explode, causing a large amount of shadow damage to anyone nearby, including Sarah. The most important thing for everyone to be mindful of in Phase 1 is the position of the green clouds. If a player comes into contact with one of the clouds, it will begin to spawn in an extra Guardian. If your DPS is high enough, you can potentially handle one extra add, but any more and you'll quickly be overwhelmed. You'll also need to be able to interrupt the Guardian's Dark Volley ability. If they're allowed to cast it, it will deal a fair amount of shadow damage to everyone in the raid and reduce healing effectiveness by 25% for 10 seconds. This ability is why it's important to keep the number of Guardians under control. The Guardians can also use Dominate Mind, a mind control ability that will need to be dispelled offensively through either a Priest's Dispel Magic or a Shaman's Purge. Sarah will be casting a few spells throughout this phase as well. Sarah's Fervor will increase its target's damage dealt by 20% and damage taken by 100%. Sarah's Anger will do some shadow damage over time, but give a powerful boost to physical damage. Sarah's Blessing will heal the target to full, but then cause a large amount of shadow damage over time. She can cast these abilities both on raid members and on the Guardians, so healers will need to be mindful and throw some extra heals on the raid members afflicted by them. Phase 1 is largely a matter of control. As long as you can kill the Guardians quickly and keep away from the green clouds, it's fairly simple. It takes 8 Guardians to deal enough damage to bring Sarah's health down and start Phase 2. Once Phase 2 begins, you'll need to quickly kill any extra Guardians during the short transition period. Phase 2 is the most difficult and by far the most complicated portion of the fight. 3 types of tentacles will spawn around the room. Constrictor tentacles will grab random raid members and should be first priority for DPS. Note that paladins and mages can escape constrictor tentacles with Divine Shield and Ice Block, which not only frees them but also instantly kills the constrictor tentacle. Corruptor tentacles will cast various debuffs on the raid, many of which can be cleansed or dispelled. Although they can be something of a nuisance, as long as you're able to keep on top of dispels, these should be saved for last. The large Crusher tentacles are the biggest threat in Phase 2. These will channel an ability called Diminish Power that reduces the damage of everyone in the raid by 20%. This can be interrupted by hitting them with a melee attack. However, as they're attacked, they'll stack up a buff that increases their melee damage. The best way to deal with these is to let ranged DPS focus fire them down as they begin casting Diminish Power, and then stop DPS for a second to let the buff fall off so a tank can run in and hit them to interrupt the channel. After a while, a few portals will spawn in around Yogg Saron. Melee DPS should take these and will be transported to a scene from Azeroth's history. There will be a few attackable NPCs around the room that, when hit, will turn into a tentacle that needs to be killed. There will also be a few floating skulls around the room that will damage you as long as your character is facing them. The trick here is to angle your character so that you're not facing any of the skulls, but can still hit the NPCs. Once all of the tentacles in the room have been killed, a doorway will open to Yogg Saron's brain. At the same time, all of the tentacles in the main room will be stunned. Everyone in the main room should use this time to clear out all the stunned tentacles, while the melee in the portals put some DPS in on Yogg Saron's brain. However, the brain will be casting an ability called Induce Madness during this time. When the cast finishes, anyone still inside the brain area will be driven insane, making them permanently mind-controlled for the rest of the encounter, even through Battle Res, Soulstone, or Reincarnation. Melee must take the portals inside the brain room to flee back to the surface before the cast finishes. There are 2 other abilities to be mindful of during this phase. One is the green death rays that Sarah will be casting around the room. These will instantly kill anyone they touch, but are slow-moving and easy to avoid. The other is called Brain Link. This will target 2 random raid members and create a beam of energy connecting them. If the beam is red, they will be taking damage and should move closer to each other until the beam turns white. You'll be receiving some help from the keepers throughout the fight. Each will provide a raid-wide aura that increases damage done by 10% along with an extra buff. Thorum increases your health by 20%. Hodir reduces your damage taken by 20%. Freya increases the healing you take by 20%. And Mimiron increases your movement speed by 20%. On top of this, Mimiron will reduce the attack and casting speed of every enemy in the room considerably, and Hodir will occasionally be able to save a raid member from death by encasing them in a block of ice. Throughout the entire fight, you'll have a debuff called Sanity, which stacks up to 100. This represents how much of a grip Yogg Saron has on your mind. When your sanity runs out, you'll be driven insane. Many abilities will reduce your sanity, so you'll need to keep a careful eye on it. If necessary, you can regain sanity by standing in one of the green beams Freya provides near the edges of the room. Once the melee DPS in the portals has taken the brain down to 30%, Phase 3 will begin and they should immediately return to the surface where Yogg Saron's protective barrier will have fallen. Phase 3 is a hard DPS burn on Yogg Saron. You just need to finish him off at this point. Immortal Guardians will spawn from time to time, which a tank will need to pick up, and you'll need to split just enough DPS away to bring them down to 1%. In this kill, we had melee stay on Yogg while ranged focused on the Guardians, but melee can switch as well if needed. Once they're brought to 1%, they'll be immune to further damage until Thorum finishes them off with his Titanic Storm ability. Yogg Saron will also occasionally channel an ability called Lunatic Gaze. This works similar to the floating skulls in the Phase 2 brain area. Just face your character away from him while he casts it. This ability is the only one to keep track of during this phase. Just burn him down quickly before the 15-minute enrage timer runs out. Yogg Saron is a very complicated and challenging encounter, making him worthy of his position as the final normal mode boss in Ulduar. As always, for further information on this or any other encounter, including any heroic mode changes, check the Project Marmot forums at TankSpot.com. If you're watching this on YouTube, just follow the link in the movie details. Thanks for watching, and have fun.